Have you ever promised yourself that this time would be different? That you wouldn't quit? But then, the work got hard. The results came too slow. And a quiet voice inside your head whispered, "You can always try again later." That single sentence has killed more dreams than failure ever will. Because as long as you leave yourself an easy way out, your mind will always choose comfort over greatness. But what if you destroyed the exit? Today, we are diving into the legendary story of Valor, a weak, overlooked boy who discovered that victory doesn't belong to the strongest. It belongs to the person who removes every excuse to quit. Watch this story until the very end, because the hidden rule his master teaches him in Chapter 5 will completely change how you look at your own goals. And by the final chapter, you'll know exactly which bridge in your own life you need to burn today to finally achieve the success you're chasing. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Trap of the Easy Way Out. Have you ever looked at your own reflection and promised yourself, "This time will be different. This is my last chance. I will not quit again"? We have all been there. But then, the initial wave of excitement fades. The work grows heavier and harder than you ever expected. People around you begin to doubt your vision, and the results you desperately look for come agonizingly slow. In the quiet hours of the night, fear grows louder than your dream. That is when your mind whispers its most dangerous lie. You can always try again later. That single sentence has stolen more dreams than failure ever could. As long as you leave yourself an easy way back, your mind will actively search for it the moment life becomes painful. But what if there was no way back? What if the only road left was the one directly in front of you? Would you fight harder? Would you become stronger? This is the story of a young warrior who discovered that victory does not belong to the strongest or the most talented. It belongs to the one who destroys every excuse to quit. Chapter 2. The Feather Warrior. Long before great kingdoms covered the land, the mountain kingdom of Dravenor stood proud. Massive stone walls protected its people, and every child grew up listening to the legendary tales of fearless warriors who defended their home with honor. Among those children was a quiet boy named Valor. Unlike the other boys in the village, Valor was not born with the gifts of a warrior. He was shorter than most children his age, his arms were thin, and he tired quickly during physical labor. Whenever the village boys gathered to practice with wooden swords, Valor was invariably the first one to be struck down into the dirt. Every defeat brought a cruel wave of laughter from the onlookers. Look at him. There goes the Feather Warrior. He cannot even hold a sword straight. He belongs in the kitchen, not on the battlefield. The harsh words stung deeply, leaving wounds far worse than the physical bruises covering his skin. Every evening, Valor returned home with bleeding hands and a heavy heart. His mother would gently clean his cuts, while his father sat by the fire, observing in silence. One night, after a particularly brutal day of training, Valor could no longer hold back his tears. He asked the question that had been burning inside him for years. "Father," he choked out, "how do I become stronger?" His father placed another log into the fireplace, watching the sparks rise into the dark chimney before answering. "Strength is not built inside your arms first, my boy. It is built inside the place that refuses to surrender." Valor did not fully understand his father's words that night, but the sentiment took root deep within his soul. Chapter 3. The Arena of Broken Dreams. Years passed like a slow-moving river. The boys Valor grew up with transformed into tall, skilled warriors. Valor improved as well, but his progress was agonizingly slow. Whenever he managed to win a single spar, he would lose the next 3. Whenever he climbed one step higher in his training, someone else easily climbed 5. Many nights, he lay awake secretly wondering if the bullies were right. Maybe he was simply born to lose. Then came the announcement that changed everything. The king declared that the kingdom would soon select new warriors for the prestigious royal guard. It was the highest honor a citizen of Dravenor could achieve. Only 12 warriors would be chosen from thousands of competitors. The entire kingdom celebrated, filled with anticipation. Valor felt a whirlwind of emotions. Excitement, followed by paralyzing fear, a spark of hope, and finally, crushing doubt. Yet, he chose to fight. For weeks, he trained harder than he ever thought possible. Long before the sun broke the horizon, the rhythmic swing of his wooden sword cut through the morning mist. During the day, he carried heavy boulders up steep mountain paths to build his endurance. After sunset, he trained alone under the moonlight until his legs buckled beneath him. His hands became a map of raw blisters, and his shoulders burned with constant pain. Still, he kept pushing. The day of the selection finally arrived. The Grand Royal Arena was packed with thousands of shouting spectators. Trumpets echoed off the stone walls as the finest young men of the kingdom stepped forward. One by one, the grueling challenges began. Swordsmanship, archery, endurance, strategy, and courage. Valor survived the first round by the skin of his teeth. He barely passed the second. But by the third, his body began to fail him. He failed the third challenge completely and lost miserably in the fourth. When the final tallies were made, the competition ended, and Valor's name was nowhere near the chosen 12. Slowly, the crowds emptied from the stadium. The grand celebrations moved into the city streets, leaving Valor entirely alone in the center of the vast, quiet arena. He stared blankly at the scratched wooden sword lying in the dust beside him. Months of sacrifice. Years of hard work. All for nothing. For the first time in his life, he truly, deeply wanted to quit. Chapter 4. The Right Question. As the twilight deepened, a lone figure stepped into the arena. It was General Chiron, a legendary commander who had protected Dravenor for over 40 years. His heavy armor bore the deep, jagged scars of 100 battles. Without saying a word, the old general walked up, picked up Valor's discarded wooden sword, and flipped it through the air, catching Valor in the chest. Again, Chiron commanded, his voice flat. Valor looked up, his eyes filled with confusion and resentment. I already failed, General. It's over. Chiron's expression did not change. I did not ask what happened. I said again. Valor slowly dragged himself to his feet. He raised the wooden blade. They clashed. Within seconds, Chiron disarmed him and knocked him flat onto the stone floor. Again, Chiron barked. They fought once more. Valor lost instantly. Again. They fought until the stars completely covered the night sky. Exhausted, bruised, and weeping with frustration, Valor finally screamed, "Why do you keep making me fight when you already know I cannot win?" Chiron lowered his weapon and smiled for the very first time. Good. You have finally asked the right question. Valor stared at him, wiping the sweat from his brow. The wrong question was always, how do I become stronger? Chiron said quietly. The right question is, how long can I continue after I already want to quit? Those words echoed through the empty arena, striking Valor like a thunderbolt. Chapter 5. Burning the Bridge. The following morning, General Chiron offered Valor an unexpected lifeline. Come with me, he said. They traveled deep into the jagged mountains for several days until they reached a remote, abandoned fortress hidden beneath swirling dark clouds. Broken stone towers loomed over old training grounds overgrown with wild grass. This, Chiron explained, was once the home of the greatest warrior school in the kingdom. What happened to it? Valor asked, looking at the ruins. The students became comfortable, Chiron replied bitterly. They trained only when they felt motivated. They wanted the glory of victory without the suffering of preparation. And so, when an actual enemy came, they lost everything. Chiron turned fully and looked directly into Valor's eyes. If you wish to stay here and train under me, there is only one rule. What is it? Chiron pointed toward the long, narrow wooden bridge that connected the isolated fortress cliff to the rest of the mountain range. If you cross that bridge tomorrow morning, you will burn it to the ground. Valor gasped. No bridge? There would be no way back home. Chiron nodded grimly. As long as your eyes keep looking backward, they will never truly see the road ahead. That night, Valor could not sleep. He tossed and turned, thinking of his parents, his comfortable village, his friends, the warm meals waiting for him, and the peaceful, ordinary life he could still choose to live. Everything inside his comfort zone whispered, "Go back. No one will blame you. You tried your best." Just before the sun rose, Valor walked out onto the old wooden bridge. He stopped right in the middle. He stood there for a long time, looking back at the path that led to his old life. Then, he reached out and took a blazing torch from the fortress wall. His hands trembled. His heart raced wildly in his chest. One small movement, and there would be no turning back. He closed his eyes, took a deep, steadying breath, and dropped the torch onto the dry wood beneath his feet. Within moments, fierce orange flames swallowed the structure. The fire grew higher and higher until the wood groaned, snapped, and the only road home collapsed into the roaring river hundreds of feet below. General Chiron stood at the edge of the cliff, watching silently. Valor watched the last burning embers disappear into the rushing water. For the first time in his life, quitting was no longer an option. The only road left was forward. Chapter 6. The Unfair Battlefield. The very next morning, Chiron woke Valor before the sun even hit the horizon. "There is no breakfast," the general stated bluntly. "There is no comfort here. There is only training." Before Valor could even stand up straight, Chiron tossed a wooden sword at his chest. "Fight." Valor's muscles were stiff and screaming in pain from the journey up the mountain. Within seconds, he was eating dirt. Chiron did not offer a hand to help him up. Days quickly bled into weeks, and weeks into months. Every morning began in the freezing dark before sunrise. Every night ended long after the moon filled the sky. Some days, Chiron made Valor climb the highest cliffs while carrying massive stones tied to his back. Other days, he forced him to stand beneath ice-cold waterfalls until his legs shook so violently he could barely balance. On one particular afternoon, Chiron ordered him to swing his sword 10,000 times before sunset. When Valor finished, exhausted, he admitted he had counted only 9,998. "Start over from zero," Chiron commanded. Valor flew into a rage. "This is unfair," he yelled. Chiron looked back at him, completely devoid of emotion. "The battlefield is unfair. You are not training for comfort, boy. You are training for reality." One evening, Valor collapsed onto the training grounds, completely broken. "I cannot do this anymore," he whispered into the dirt. Chiron quietly walked over and sat down beside him. He picked up a small, dried seed from the soil and placed it in Valor's palm. "What do you see?" "A seed," Valor muttered. Chiron nodded. "If I crack it open right now, will I find a fully grown tree inside?" "No. So, does that mean the tree does not exist?" Valor remained silent, looking at the tiny seed. "The strongest things in this world grow where nobody can see them," Chiron said softly. "Your strength is growing deep inside you. But because you cannot see the roots yet, you fool yourself into thinking nothing is changing." Those words mended something broken inside Valor. From that day forward, he stopped asking when success would come. He stopped looking for rewards. He focused entirely on one simple goal, becoming just a little bit better than he was yesterday. Months later, Chiron finally handed him a beautifully crafted steel sword. "This sword is not a reward," Chiron warned him. "It is a responsibility." As Valor gripped the hilt, it felt incredibly heavy. Not because of the metal, but because of the profound weight of what it represented. Chapter 7. The Shadow of the Black Legion. One bitter, freezing morning, a royal messenger arrived at the fortress ruins. His horse was foaming at the mouth, covered in dust, and the rider's face was pale with terror. He fell to his knees before General Chiron. "General, the kingdom is under brutal attack." Chiron's hardened face darkened instantly. "Who?" "The Black Legion." Valor felt a chill run down his spine. The Black Legion was a name spoken only in nightmares. They were not ordinary soldiers. They were merciless conquerors. Every village they touched was reduced to ash. Every army that stood against them was completely annihilated. Their ruthless leader, General Mordrek, had never lost a single war in his entire life. Chiron looked out over the cliff where the bridge used to be. There is no time. Without another word, Chiron and Valor scaled down the treacherous, vertical cliffs of the mountain, a path so dangerous no ordinary traveler would ever dare attempt it. After 2 days of nonstop, exhausting travel, they finally breached the gates of Dravenor. The sight was horrific. Thick black smoke choked the sky. Terrified families were fleeing the city walls with whatever they could carry. Bloodied soldiers carried their wounded companions through the chaotic streets. Fear had conquered the kingdom long before the enemy army had even arrived. Inside the royal hall, the king sat with his head in his hands. "Our army is far too small," he admitted openly. "If we lose the battle tomorrow, Dravenor falls forever." A heated argument broke out among the military leaders. Many commanders suggested retreating behind the inner city walls to hide. Others, completely broken in spirit, wanted to surrender immediately to spare their lives. Everyone argued. Everyone feared the morning. Then, Charon's powerful voice cut through the noise. "We will not hide." The entire room fell dead silent. "We attack at sunrise," Chiron declared. A cynical commander laughed out loud. "They outnumber us 3-1, old man." Chiron answered calmly. "Then we must fight like men who have no second chance." Chapter 8. No Second Chances. That night, Valor walked slowly through the quiet military camp. He saw the face of fear everywhere he looked. He saw young boys writing final letters to their mothers by candlelight. He saw hardened, veteran warriors silently sharpening their blades. Some men prayed fervently into the night. Others wept silently where they thought no one could see them. In that moment, Valor realized a profound truth. Even the bravest people feel fear. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to move forward despite it. Just before the first light of dawn, Chiron gathered the entire army together. He stood atop a massive boulder so every man could see him. "I have only one order," Chiron shouted across the field. "If any man here wishes to leave and save himself, step forward and leave right now." Not a single soldier moved. Chiron nodded approvingly. "Good." He then pointed toward the massive line of supply wagons parked at the rear of the camp, wagons filled with food, spare armor, tents, and everything needed to sustain a long retreat. Then, he uttered the words that shocked the entire army. "Burn them." The soldiers stared in utter disbelief. A captain rushed forward, shouting, "General, those are our vital supplies. If we lose, we have nothing to fall back on." Chiron looked out over the men. "If we plan for a retreat, our minds will constantly search for that retreat the moment the battle gets bloody. But if victory is the only road left alive, we will discover a strength within ourselves we never knew we possessed." The soldiers looked at one another, the weight of the words sinking in. Slowly, one brave soldier stepped forward with a burning torch. Then another. Within minutes, the supply wagons were completely engulfed in roaring flames. Great plumes of black smoke rose into the morning sky. Every single man understood the message perfectly. There was no turning back. Chapter 9. The Clash in the Valley. Across the valley, General Mordrek stood atop his war chariot and smiled cruelly as he saw the significantly smaller army of Dravenor marching out to meet him. "They have come to surrender themselves to the slaughter," he mocked. He was dead wrong. Instead of forming one massive, easy-to-surround block, Chiron divided his smaller forces into highly mobile, aggressive units. The enemy expected a standard, desperate head-on collision. Instead, Valor led a small, elite team silently through the thick forest flanking the battlefield. Their objective was incredibly dangerous, but vital: destroy the enemy's massive signal towers. Without them, Mordrek's commanders would be completely blind, unable to coordinate their massive numbers. Moving like ghosts through the trees, Valor felt the lessons of the isolated fortress rush through his veins. Patience. Focus. Absolute discipline. The moment the tower guards turned their backs, Valor's team struck with lethal precision. Within minutes, the primary signal towers crashed down in flames. Chaos instantly rippled through the Black Legion's lines. Without clear signals, commanders began shouting conflicting orders. Some units pushed forward while others pulled back in confusion. The once perfect, unstoppable war machine became a disorganized mess. Seeing the perfect opening, Chiron raised his sword and charged. For Dravenor. Thousands of voices answered the battle cry, echoing off the mountains. The clash that followed shook the very earth of the valley. Metal crashed against metal, and a thick cloud of dust covered the sun. Valor fought with a ferocious intensity he didn't know he possessed. He wasn't fighting out of hatred for the men in front of him. He was fighting out of a fierce, burning love for the people standing behind him. Amidst the chaos of the melee, Valor spotted General Chiron completely surrounded by a sea of enemy elite guards. Without a second thought, Valor hacked his way through the crowd, putting his body between the blades and his master. They stood back to back, the old master and the young student. Years of brutal, unseen training had prepared them for this exact, defining moment. One by one, the enemy fell before their perfect harmony. Suddenly, the crowd parted, and General Mordrek himself entered the fray. He was a terrifying giant of a man, clad in heavy, spiked black armor. His massive broadsword looked heavy enough to crack an anvil. With a roar of pure rage, he unleashed a devastating strike at Chiron. Chiron blocked the first blow, parried the second, and sidestepped the third. But his aging, battered body finally failed him. Mordrek's heavy blade found an opening, cutting deeply across the old general's side. Chiron collapsed heavily onto one knee, blood pooling in the dirt. "Master!" Valor screamed, his heart tearing open. Through the intense pain, Chiron looked up at Valor and smiled a bloody smile. "The sword is yours now, boy." With a final, heroic burst of strength, Chiron threw himself forward, pinning Mordrek's shield and pushing the giant backward. It gave Valor an opening, one single, fleeting window of opportunity. Suddenly, all the noise of the battlefield faded into absolute silence inside Valor's mind. He didn't see the enemy anymore. He remembered every grueling sunrise, every time he had been knocked into the dirt, every failure, every painful lesson, and the burning bridge. He lunged forward. It was one perfect, flawless strike. Valor's steel sword shattered Mordrek's blade into pieces. A lightning-fast secondary strike sent the giant crashing lifelessly into the dust. The soldiers of the Black Legion watched in absolute horror. Their undefeated, godlike leader had fallen. Without his terrifying presence and commands, their resolve broke completely. They turned and began a frantic, chaotic retreat. The battle was won. Dravenor had survived. Chapter 10: The Legacy of the Broken Bridge. As the golden sun began to set over the scarred valley, Valor sat quietly in the dirt, cradling Charon's head in his lap. The old warrior's breathing had grown incredibly shallow. "You were right, master," Valor whispered, tears streaming down his face. The strength was never in the sword. Chiron smiled weakly, his eyes reflecting the twilight sky. "It never was, my boy. It was always in the man who refused to quit." Those were his final words. The kingdom buried Chiron with the highest honors, mourning him as one of the greatest heroes to ever live. Many years later, when the quiet boy had grown into a wise ruler, people would often ask King Valor how an ordinary, weak boy managed to become the most legendary warrior in the history of the land. He never spoke to them about natural talent. He never spoke about luck or destiny. Instead, he would simply step out onto his balcony and point toward the distant, jagged mountains where the ruins of the old fortress still stood against the sky. "The day I burned that bridge," King Valor would say softly, I did not destroy my way home. I destroyed the version of myself that always wanted to run. The lesson for your journey. My friend, every single one of us has a bridge we keep open. For some of us, that bridge is fear. For others, it is a mountain of comfortable excuses. For many, it is the bad habit of constantly waiting for the perfect moment to start. As long as you allow that bridge to exist in the back of your mind, you will cross it and retreat to your old habits the absolute second life becomes difficult, painful, or uncomfortable. You do not have to burn down real structures or physical ships. But you must mentally burn the excuses that keep dragging you backward into mediocrity. True success belongs to the people who are fully committed, not halfway committed, not when they feel like it committed, but fully committed. Choose one dream that you have been putting off out of fear or doubt. Today, take the first real step toward it. Do not let your mind build an easy way back out. Your future is forged by the concrete actions you take right now, not by the beautiful plans you keep postponing until tomorrow. If you are truly sure about where you want to go in this life, burn the bridge and never look back. King Valor didn't destroy his way home that day. He destroyed the version of himself that always wanted to run. My friends, every single one of us is keeping a bridge alive. For some, it's fear. For others, it's excuses or waiting for a perfect moment that doesn't exist. But success belongs to the fully committed. If this story sparked something inside you, don't let that fire die out when this video ends. Pick one dream you've been delaying and take one real step toward it today. Stories like this take hours of writing, editing, and polishing to bring to life. If it brought you value, please show your support by hitting that like button, subscribing to Wally Tales, and sharing this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. Before you go, make sure to click on the video on your screen right now. Don't joke too much. It packs another powerful life lesson that might completely change how you use your words and the impact they have on others. Until next time, stay brave, stay disciplined. And remember, if you are truly sure about your destination, burn the bridge and never look back.